At least I didn't have 3 children. A glint of moisture came to her eyes as she thought of the children she would never have with George. The bank teller stammered quickly. I didn't mean to be indelicate, Mrs. Hamill. Kathleen smiled. Smiling was becoming easier as the days passed. It's all right, Mr. Dieter. A woman has to get on with her life when she suddenly finds herself alone. At least George didn't leave me penniless. She smiled thinly. He was a good provider. Dieter began counting the money from the savings account Kathleen was closing out. All that she and George had managed to save, and some that George's father had left them when he'd died. 18 crisp $100 bills, a 20, 6 ones, and some change. Dieter snapped the paper smartly through his fingers and laid the bills out so that all the edges precisely aligned, and all the faces stared in the same direction. There you have it, $1,826.43. That's a tidy sum for a woman alone. You won't be keeping all this cash in that cabin of yours. Dieter's eyebrow rose with genuine concern. A movement caught his eye as a man stepped through the front door. Oh, no, Kathleen answered. My baggage is at this very moment being delivered to that depot. I'm leaving Buena Vista on the 2 o'clock train this afternoon. Leaving? Where to, Mrs. Hamill? Malcolm Dieter refocused his attention on the woman in the black dress on the other side of the iron grillwork. At 25, Kathleen Hamill cut a fine figure. Her auburn hair was tied up in a proper bun at the back of her head. Beneath the black hat, brown eyes peered brightly at the bank teller. The swollen redness had faded from them in the 3 weeks since that morning when the timbers on the 8th level had given way, and the cloud of dust bellowed from the mine's mouth. 7 bodies were finally recovered, but George's had not been among them. There had been nothing to bury but a symbolic empty box. Pitkin, she said. My sister Marie and her husband have asked me to stay with them while I get my life back in order. Kathleen gathered up the money and methodically recounted the bills, even though she had tallied them as Dieter had laid them out. I'm sorry to hear you'll be going, Mrs. Hamill. You'll be missed. Folks around here— A voice rang out at the front of the bank. Dieter and a second teller behind the cage with him looked up. Kathleen Hamill turned, her mouth forming a huge O. The money, clasped in her fingers, was momentarily forgotten. Hands up where I can see 'em, Neville Hallidae said, stepping through the open doorway. Ben Masters slipped in behind him, casting a backward glance into the empty street before shutting the tall doors to the bank behind Wilson. The darkness inside cut a sharp edge against the bright morning, despite the twin shafts of sunlight slanting through the windows where dust motes swirled and flashed. A revolver tipped up into view from under Turner Wilson's slicker. Scott McIntyre sidled up alongside one of the 2 tall windows and peered out at the dusty street. Neville Hallidae's footsteps made a hollow thump on the wooden floor. Kathleen Hamill's eyes leaped from the revolver in Hallidae's hand to the red bandana hiding his face. Fill it up, bankman, he said, tossing a canvas sack over the top of the iron grill. The revolver waved at the cash drawer. Dieter gave a quick, nervous nod of his head and began shoveling packets of new bills into the bag. You too, mister. Hallidae's pistol motioned at the second teller. Yes, sir. He dove into his cash drawer and came up with packets of crisp bills, freshly arrived from the mint in Denver. Another mine payroll late this month, Ben mused. A door in the back wall opened, and a heavy-set man, Ben guessed to be around 50, stepped in from the office. What's going on here? His words caught like a fishbone in his throat. He sucked in a breath that took up the little slack in the heavy gold Dickens chain girdling his paunch, from vest pocket to vest pocket. Ben moved up behind the startled man and nudged him with the barrel of his revolver. We're making a little withdrawal, he said, his breath puffing out the bandana. By the window.